Tonight we are continuing our study of Hebrews chapter 13, a great chapter in the scriptures and one that we need to acquaint ourselves with. But when we get to the end of Hebrews 13, there are a lot of commands. And last week we read verse 1 and verse 2. And who wants to summarize the commands of verse 1 and 2?
Well,
Anybody want to summarize that?
okay. It says keep showing love to one another in the church and don't neglect hospitality to strangers.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So both inside and outside the church, we're supposed to show grace and hospitality.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the next verse, verse 3. Who would like to read verse 3 for us?
Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you are also in the body.
Can you read that again?
I have a better translation. I'll read it in this other translation.
Okay.
Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured as though you yourself are being tortured.
Okay. Evie, can I ask you to read it in NASB? Because what it was a little bit...
Okay. I think the first time she read it was in NASB. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Tim, you're falling asleep. Remember the prisoners as though in prison with them, and those who are ill-treated, since you yourselves also are in the body, meaning ill-treated in the body.
Now here's my first question. Who is he talking about when he talks about prisoners?
Probably actual.
Yes, actual prisoners, but why were these people imprisoned?
Maybe for preaching the gospel.
They were in prison because they were Christians.
Yeah.
So this is a call for people to remember those who are in the persecuted church around the world. And this verse tells us not only to remember the prisoners, it tells us the extent to which we should remember the prisoners. And what is the extent?
As though we were in prison with them.
Yeah. Remember them as if you were there yourself and wanted somebody to come and help you. Now, what do you think that the act of remembrance involved when it came to them?
Remember. Huh. Oh, wow.
Is it just think about them? Oh, think about the prisoners as if you were in prison yourself.
Probably
Is
means
that what the word remember means?
Take them some food and stuff like that, because the prisons didn't take care of people. So if they didn't have people come and visit them, they'd starve or just, get sick.
So remembering them is tied to action, not simply tied to thought. I think this is important because there are a lot of Christian words that we often tie just to thought rather than action. Faith is one of those. Believe is one of those. Remember is one of those. And yet in the Bible, that always carries with it an action element. So remembering here is not talking about some cognitive notion, talking instead about actually doing something. So my question is, what does the act of remembrance involve then?
Just like Evie said, their prison systems are not like our prison systems here in the U.S., where you're given clothes, food. Sometimes you're given something to do. Now you were thrown in prison, and you were like, they threw away. They walked away, and that was, you had to either have someone come from the outside to bring you what you needed, or you just died.
Right. That's exactly it. And so
death sentence.
You didn't get fed. as people are chained to the wall, they don't get fed unless somebody brings them the food.
Yeah.
It's not like a U.S. prison. That's your point. And that is a good point.
Right.
So the extent to which we remember them is the extent as if it was us. But there's another further reason why it's given as to why you should remember the prisoners. And what's the reason?
Well, that's the second clause is about those who are ill-treated, or one of the translations said tortured. And then the reason given is because you yourselves also are in the body. So I don't know if as that one, the second translation that I read applied the being ill-treated, meaning you also are ill-treated in the body. But I don't know if it just means that you have a physical body, and the body, you understand suffering because you have a physical body. So think about the people that are being ill-treated. It's either they were all being ill-treated, and this is a command to sympathize with the others, or it's just a general remark about being in the body.
Okay, how do we tell which one it is?
I don't know. Read it in Greek, I guess.
My translation says, share the sorrow of those being mistreated, for you know what they are going through.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a lot of people on the outside have been mistreated as well.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah, the new RSV just says the word tortured. It says like as you yourselves are being tortured.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not fun.
So true. And yeah, so much to say on that. But I think I want to go on. Anybody want to read verse 4?
I can read it.
Okay, honey.
Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. For fornicators and adulterers, God will judge.
Okay, so what is this a verse about?
Hey, wow.
About adultery and fornication.
And honoring your vows.
Mm-hmm.
What an honor. Yes.
In this day and age, we don't hear a lot of fornicators and adulterers God will judge, do we?
No.
Yeah, that's what it says. And
Mm-hmm.
do you think people take this seriously in the church?
I think it's a lot. Yeah. In evangelical churches, I think it's taken seriously, but that doesn't mean that there's no Christians falling into sin. For sure, there are some.
Well, it's one way that churches break up is like sometimes if couples are
Mm-hmm.
even just having trouble, let alone adultery, like people take sides, and it can the devil really, the devil wants to destroy all our relationships, especially the marriage. So there's a lot of temptations around, especially when people are younger and more attractive. No, there's definitely a lot of temptations. It seems like, yeah, the devil's about destroying relationships, especially marriage.
I would agree with that. I think that's true.
And the Lord is about restoration.
Yep, that's exactly what he's about. Is marriage held in honor today?
No.
Well, let's move on to the next one. What's verse 5 say?
Stay away from the love of money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never, never fail you nor forsake you.
That's comforting.
I've proved that over and over again.
Well,
God has said that to me over and over again.
There's a lot in this verse. The first thing is that it reminds us that there are two kinds of people in the world: those who love people and use money, or those who love money and use people.
Wow.
And give me 5 minutes in a room with someone, and I can tell you what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
It says,
Wow.
it doesn't say don't have money. It doesn't say don't use money. It says let your character be free from the love of money.
Hmm.
So how do you tell the difference whether or not you've crossed the line between using money properly and loving it in your heart? What's the diagnostic tool?
I think if you've earned the money honestly and do your business with honesty and integrity, it's okay to earn money. You know, it's not necessarily the love of money that's driven you.
Yeah, we're not, but at this point, we're not focusing in on people who are just earning money. We're asking ourselves the question, how do you tell the difference between someone who's properly earning it and somebody who loves it?
It's like any obsession, any love, any obsession. You're going to hear it mentioned, you're going to hear it talked about, or you're going to see them just think about it. It'll be like their goal, their thought life. It'll be their lover.
So saying one of the diagnostic tools is, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
And that's a really good one, because Jesus says, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So I think that's a very good diagnostic tool. There's one more that I think of. Can anybody think about it?
Oh.
Comes from Ephesians 4. Let him who steal no longer, but rather let him labor, working with his hands, and in order that what? In order that
Hey, share with those in need. I'm not looking at it. I'm trying to remember it.
in order that you might share with the one who has need. So,
Mhm.
so the point is the second diagnostic tool is are you willing to share?
For tax purposes. Oh, except they took that away.
What do you mean?
Oh, some people would give just to get a tax break,
Oh,
but they've made that more difficult.
oh, really?
So you have to give to give. Yeah. They raised the threshold of
Oh,
giving. So you have to
hmm.
give a lot more to get a tax break. A lot of people
Wow.
were lying.
Yeah.
I've never been really hungry for money. I've always trusted the Lord about it all. And an example, the other day, I have to have an operation next Wednesday on my eye, and
Really?
I have 3 things wrong with it, but I have astigmatism, and they said that it will cost me an extra $900 to have a special lens to take care of that. And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? You know, and then I went to my accountant, and he worked out my tax return for the year. They worked it out very quickly on the computer, and I got a $900 refund. And
Oh,
this sort of thing happens to me all the time. And I'm not looking for it, but it's always there for me.
Wow. You're blessed.
You know,
So you're good.
exactly the same amount. And I couldn't believe, I thought, how come I get that refund? Mainly because I'm not earning so much.
Well, the writer to Hebrews says 2 things in verse 5. And the first thing is the command. And the second is an implicit command that will let us know whether or not we are living in the first half of the command. So what's the second half of the command in verse 5?
being content with what you have.
See,
Or are you
that's
talking
the
even
third
less?
that's the third diagnostic. Are you
Hmm.
content?
Hmm.
So being willing to share, whether you talk about it all the time, and whether you're content with what you have.
Mm. Wow, that's not the American way.
No, it's not. But there's a reason why it is that we're supposed to not love money. And what is that reason that's given later in the verse? In verse 6.
Well, we actually, by loving money, we're actually making it our God.
Yeah. In the rest of the verse, God promises never to forsake us, and also that he'll be our helper.
He'll never leave us. So the point is that if you've got God, you don't need money,
Oh, wow.
or you don't need to love money. You just
Right.
need to be content with the little that you have. I wish every American could see what I'm seeing on the streets of Thailand right now, with people who are destitute poor, who have no means. We walked in a mall today so that the young lady that's traveling with us, the daughter of one of my friends in the US, so that she could find a t-shirt to work out with. And we were descended on by dozens and dozens of people who worked in the mall, running up to us, to try and sell us what they had.
Oh,
And you walk down the streets and places are shuttered. They've all gone into bankruptcy, and it's so
oh, shoot.
sad. And then here I am, I worry about how much money I have or don't have. And yet people here are wondering, do they have $6 to be able to buy food for their whole family today? So this experience is really, and I've been very tempted to stop on our Connecting Families ministry because we're running up against the complete limitation of our financial resources, and people have stopped giving specifically to our Connecting Families fund. And I don't want to stop it, but it's not sustainable, and we need massive amounts of income in order to keep it up. But the truth is that the coronavirus has still messed up other people's lives to the point where they cannot operate a business when there's no
Yeah.
tourists. So
Oh,
Thailand and Indonesia have been devastated by this loss, by the
wow.
economic toll, and it's quite bad. Oh, so good Lord help us. But I think
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that having God is a substitute for not having something to eat.
Huh.
No,
I'm not
not at all.
saying, but I am saying that there are people who have a lot of money, but yet they don't feel the presence of God, that He won't desert them or won't forsake them. And that's supposed to be a precious part of the promise. So to know that God is with you always, He won't leave you, He won't forsake you.
Wow.
I know people who've been left by their spouses. They feel such a sense of desertion. So when God says, I will never leave you, I will never desert you, I will never forsake you, it really strikes a chord when the person who is supposed to love you the most didn't love you the most.
Aye.
But what is the end of verse 6 teaching us about God's love?
The Lord is my helper, and I'm not afraid of anything that mere man can do to me.
Absolutely.
And sometimes God only just comes in at the last minute too. So we have to have that faith. It's very hard to have that faith when you're trying to meet a mortgage or people are
But it's,
knocking at your door for money.
but it's harder not to have that kind of faith.
Yes.
You and Abby raised a family and have made a life in the ministry, which is an insecure source of money, and you've done it, and you continue to do it, which is a real faith buster for a lot of us. I mean, it's a real testament. Somebody stepping out on the water.
It can be at times. But if you don't love money, it makes it easier. If you just need money,
Wow.
that's one thing. But if you love money, then you're constantly miserable. If you simply need money and then you have enough, you're content.
I noticed that. We haven't had this property that we we got to buy after a lifetime of saving. We haven't had it a year, and I'm thinking of selling it and trying to get something bigger. It's like once you get a taste of something good, you want more. And like, I want more land. It's like a never ending thing that you want to get. You know, Bruce Springsteen has a line, poor man want to be rich, rich man want to be king. King ain't satisfied till he rules everything. It's, you know, I guess God has to be careful about giving people gifts, because then you start focusing on the gifts and you want more, because, you know, you just want more.
I always say, whatever you do and wherever you go, you take yourself. So you're not going to have it. You'll go to another place and you'll still have these feelings.
And when we have something, but yet we always want more.
And when we get that more, we're still the same person who's wanting more.
I know. I'm walking through the malls of the city we're at in Thailand, and they have there's this one mall that has a Seiko watch dealer, and you know, they're like beautiful watches for $2,000 US.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, no, you know, I have a watch. Why do I need a Seiko?
Oh,
Verse 7.
verse 7. I guess I can read it. Remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, and considering the result of their conduct, imitate their faith.
Ooh, wow.
And the
Yes.
first thing I want you to see is that there's a connection between faith and action. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
You consider their conduct, and then what are you supposed to do? Imitate their what? Imitate their actions. No, it doesn't say imitate their actions. What does it say?
Imitate their faith.
Right, because their faith was action. And I think that there's a grave danger of thinking of faith simply in terms of some notional belief that we have in our head, some notion about something. If it doesn't lead to action, it's not true faith. That's what James says. So once again, what's the number one word in the passage? Verse 7.
Remember.
And what is remembering?
Doing.
The ones that taught you the word of God.
That's who you remember, Desma, but what's involved in the act of remembering?
Action, doing something.
Yeah.
So imitate their faith by imitating their actions, their life.
And then the reason for it is in verse 8. Who wants to read verse 8 for us?
Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Thank God for that.
Yes, thank God for that.
Mhm.
Jesus doesn't change.
Especially in these times. I'm quite honoured to be part of these times. I'm so pleased that God has put me here at this time.
You mean to New Zealand?
Or live in this age.
Well, this is where He's put me. So I can't say for anywhere else that He's put me, but I'm very pleased about what I've been learning from my Bible. There's so much that applies to today.
You're road tested, Desma, and you were made for such a time as this.
Yes, I believe we were. Yeah. So we don't have that frenzied worry if we have faith. You know, it's actually quite a freedom to hand over the burden.
It can be. Yeah. Verse 9.
Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them.
Yeah, there must have been some teaching about dietary laws or something, or of course the Jews observed the kosher laws, but if this is written to the Hebrew believers, but there must have been some other weird teachings going on.
Yes, do not be attracted to strange new ideas.
Mhm.
Spiritual strength comes as a gift from God, not from ceremonial rulings about eating certain food.
There are plenty of strange teachings now about everything, health included, but a lot of it's weird new age spiritual stuff that is not
Yeah.
of God. But this seems to be specific to, I don't know if it's spiritual food or real food. Maybe both. I don't know.
I think that people's religion back then was an asceticism that involved eating some things and staying away from other things. And he's making reference to that and saying that the issue, heart, is not did you eat the right food, it's whether or not you're operating out of the grace of God. And then he draws a distinction between the old and the new covenant, beginning in verse 10. Who wants to read from verse 10 down 10 to 11?
Okay, we have an altar from which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy place by the high priest as an offering for sin are burned outside the camp.
What is the significance of being burned outside of the camp?
Ooh, because Christ was, well, in a way, it's reminiscent of Christ being hung on the cross outside of the city.
Yeah, we should read the next verse.
Okay, have you read the next verse?
Therefore, Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people through his own blood, suffered outside the gate. Hence, let us go out to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach. I guess the point is that the priest would take blood into the holy place, but then some of those sacrifices they weren't supposed to eat. They would the bodies would be burned outside. I know that the priest did get some of the meat from some of the sacrifices, but I guess the one with the blood offered in the holy place was the one that they burned outside. So, so he's saying that we can actually partake of Christ. We get to eat at the table with Jesus and fellowship with him.
Uh-huh. Verse 14. Who wants to read that?
For this world is not our home. We are looking forward to our everlasting home in heaven.
Okay, somebody else want to read it? That was a really out to lunch translation. No offense, Desmond. I could barely even get the meaning from that. But Evie, can you read that?
For here we do not have a lasting city, but we are seeking the city which is to come.
Okay, what's he talking about?
The sense is the same.
But he mentions a city.
Mm-hmm.
He specifically mentions a city that we don't have because it's not lasting, and then a city that we do have, which is lasting. So what's his point?
Well, this world as it is now isn't everlasting, and God will remake the heavens and earth and the New Jerusalem, and that will be our home.
Yes. So is that really the way we live our life, people?
No.
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 You know, I think that we try and build our cities, we try and build our homes. You know, it completely cracks me up how older people, no offense, this isn't an attack on you, but
Hey, I'm old too.
What cracks me up is that older people who are about to die are the ones who have the big houses. Have you ever noticed that? I mean,
Yes.
it's the younger people starting out that live in a little cracker box or live in a super small house or something, and then by the time they have the money to buy that big house, their kids have graduated. What are they going to fill it with? I'm saying
Dog.
it cracks me up. But then these people die, and then they leave these houses.
Hmm.
Okay, now that was really interesting. What kind of a city are you seeking? A lasting one, or one that's not lasting?
I
Or
was
was
gonna
it?
say you can't take it with you, but got a nice place to lay your head, what to die.
Right,
No.
but I think what cracks me up is just the size of them.
Yes,
Huh.
the cracker. Oh yeah. No, I hate those houses. Giant boxes full of stuff. No, it's our house is modest, but it's crazy. It is true. These McMansions are even ugly, but they cost a lot.
They cost a lot. What
Hmm.
city are we seeking for? I think that's my question. What city are you
Right.
living for? Jesus says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And my whole
Yeah.
point of what I was just saying is that so many people seem to be living only for the city of this world, and then they die. It's
Yes.
one thing to live in this world when you're also living, preparing for the next world. This is another thing entirely to say that this is all there is. I read that Bill Gates knocked down a multi-million dollar mansion in California because he wanted to build one to his specifications. And the one that he knocked down, um, that he was one of the things he got out of the divorce settlement, the one that he knocked down was done by a very famous architect and was known as being the best house in the whole region. And he completely knocked it down with bulldozers. A multi-million dollar house so that he could build from the bottom up his purpose-driven home. And how many more days does? No, I'm serious. I just read this. I can send you guys the article. Um, how many more days does Bill Gates have on this earth? And how many houses does he have? Why does he need another humongo one in California when he had a humongo one in Washington? How many humongo houses? No, 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 no. How many humongo houses do you need?
And how many of the homeless does he take in to share the house with him?
Oh, those dirty people. Those dirty people. No way.
I tried to give money to everybody I passed on the street
Wow.
who was homeless.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm about to go to have a nice dinner. And how can I enjoy my dinner knowing that there's people who haven't eaten for a few days out on the street begging me for my scraps? I got to tell you guys something. I have given away, I've every time I order a meal in Thailand, I only eat half of it. I box up the other half and I give it away to someone who doesn't have anything to eat. I've done that with every one of my meals. Yeah, I get by just fine on half the meal. So I think if we're living for the city that's here, we're gonna build and build and build and build and build just like they did in Genesis. They built a tower to heaven. Just
Yes.
like they built a city so they could build a name for themselves. And then what is there left?
Hmm.
Where is God in this? Where is living for another city? The older I get, the less enamored I get with possessions. Not the more I want to have bigger toys. It's the less I want a car. It's the less I want a this or that or the other because time is short. And, you know, people in the world today are horribly hurting and horribly lost. That's what I see. And both of those things are true. And some people see Christian missions as simply going to the horribly hurting, build a hospital, help them out any way you can. The other people see missions as just going and head hawking. Stop believing in the God that you were believing in and believe in my God. Um, but Christian mission actually involves both helping people while leading them to Jesus as the true God who can prepare us for eternity. So, I thought about this a lot because I want to be respectful of other people and their religions, but at the same time, do we really believe that Jesus is the only way? If so, that means that people who don't know him when they die aren't going on to the same eternity that people are going to if they know the Lord. So I think we need to reconnect with some of these essentials of the faith. And what we get in Hebrews 13 is complete practical religion. Remember the prisoners. Remember those who led you. Imitate their faith. Remember that your life is short and that the city that you're really living for and looking for is not this city, but the city yet to come. And that, I think, is that's where I end up when I go through these commands. It's just so practical. So Hebrews 13 is one of my favorite passages, always has been, always.
Is being kind is something that just brings so much joy to your heart. But on the other hand, the person who you've been kind with will never forget an act of kindness.
One would hope, and I would say in a lot of instances that's true, but some people, they're devious and they don't respond to your kindness with kindness. They often think, ah, ha, ha, I just took you in. So you can be kind, you can be generous to someone, but actually they're using you. So I've had experiences where people, it wasn't karmatic. It wasn't related to karma. I be kind to you, you remember it, and then be kind to me back. It was more like, I be kind to you, I be kind to you, and then the you that is you takes advantage of me or thinks I'm some kind of a stupid idiot because I'm being taken in by the person.
But that's not your concern. I think that's God's concern.
Well, we do kindness regardless of other people's response.
That you were taken in when you give whatever you give with your heart. I think that's the end for you. But if you find out that they've exploited you, we shouldn't be concerned with that. We should I know it's natural to be concerned about it, but I think God takes care of that. Because we can't be bitter and twisted about something that we've given with our heart.
But we can't be concerned about other people's heart motivations when we ourselves are trying to be kind. Our kindness is regardless of what their reaction is to us. My whole point, Desmond, is I'm challenging the idea, and this was my only point, I'm challenging the idea that, yes, if you're kind to people, they'll remember it. I'm pointing out that in some instances, when you're kind to people, rather than remember it and then return in kind, what they do is they take advantage of you. And that was my only point. One would hope that they remember it. And I think in a lot of instances they do. But then I've just been in so many instances on the mission field where people remember it, but it's for the purpose of then trying to get more out of me next time. What I have in mind, Desmond, is that there was a guy in the Sheeman section of our city, and I used to give money to him when I walked by, and I'm messing this up. He was in China, and every time I passed him on the way to the subway, he had a cane and didn't walk well and everything, and I would give him money, enough money to buy food, and then one night at 11 o'clock, I saw him walking down the street, jumping up and down, holding his cane above his head, and I thought, oh, I'm such a sucker, because I always gave to this guy because he always was hobbling around on a cane, and he was rejoicing in all the money that he got from all the crazy suckers like me who didn't realize that he was conning them. I gave willingly to try and bless him and love the person. If he wasn't really in need, then whatever, it's on his conscience.
Well, I think one day that might sort of resonate with them. I hope that happens, but I think if we're giving with good faith and kindness, that's the end of the story for us. We don't have to I think God takes care of the rest of it. If he's going to be dishonest, or he's clapping his hands because he thinks he's found a sucker to give him money, that's God's business, I think.
Yes, and the point I'm trying to make is that we don't give or withhold our giving based upon the reaction of the other person. That's my
No,
point. My
that's
point
right.
is that we give because God gives. We love because God loves.
Yes.
We forgive because God forgives. We don't do these things because other people are even going to recognize it. We do these things because we're told to be perfect and to imitate God and to be like Christ.
And we don't do it for gratification.
No, we don't do it to feel good about ourselves. Like I have a relative.
And if we are giving for that,
I have a relative who's always saying, "I'm a good person," and every time this person says, "I'm a good person," and then gives a list of all the wonderful things that this person has done, I think, wow, that's really not cool. But Hebrews 13, practical religion, don't live for this city. Don't forget the people who were suffering. Don't forget your leaders who really had faith. Imitate them. Imitate them, especially if they've suffered. These are the lessons from Hebrews chapter 13, lessons that are very, very important. And a lot of these lessons mean a lot more to someone in the Ukraine right now than they necessarily touch someone who's living in a non-war zone. Because the people in the Ukraine who need to be remembered are people who have been persecuted and have been run out of their houses and homes. And a lot of the people who've been run out of house and home are Christians. They're our brothers and sisters in Christ.
absolutely. Owen Pamana just sent me a video of a big church in Ukraine, and they've got beds set out all over. It's a circular church, and they've got beds set up, side by side for so many hundreds of people. But on the other hand, I talked to someone today who it was 20 years ago that he was living in Russia, and he was a very high-class chef for the rich and famous there. And he said at that time, Russia kept Europe very buoyant with, buying the most expensive cars in the world. They were the owners of the majority of the expensive cars in the world, the Russians.
Well, they certainly seem to have a corner market on expensive yachts.
Right.